Quant Network is going to be the topic of today's evening video. We are going to be discussing in this one why it is I think Quant Network is potentially going to play a very important role in the world that we are moving towards. What is that world that we are moving towards, you may ask, and that's probably a good place to start. Well, it is a world where we see everything tokenized via blockchain technology, and we move towards a world of the Internet of Things. Now, let me explain a little bit about what the Internet of Things is. So, if we take the Internet as an example, the Internet allows for interconnectivity between you and I, just like we are currently doing. It's connected the human race together. Well, the Internet of Things is essentially exactly as it is said. You know, it's the Internet of things, the Internet of devices, and it is estimated that a whopping 21 billion devices will be onboarded to the Internet of Things by 2030 or 2025. I can't quite remember. I know there's a 5-year gap there, so don't quote me on that. But we are moving towards a world where we are going to have things like smart cities. We're going to have things like smart houses, where just like in these sci-fi movies that you've seen, you know, you'll wake up perfectly, your curtains will automatically open, the coffee machine will be turned on, Alexa, or whatever variation of Alexa we have at this point, will already know what you want to listen to, and your house will kind of get itself ready. The boilers and everything will turn on. We have kind of systems already like this, but we don't have it on a mass scale. And the problem with facilitating the Internet of Things, essentially the Internet of devices where they all communicate to one another, is there needs to be security in regards to that world. Because could you imagine if your house went rogue and AWOL? We've seen lots of sci-fi horror films that are centered simply around that. Or if your robot went haywire in this kind of Internet of Things, or your Tesla car. There's that great film that came out on Netflix in regards to the cyber attacks, which I think is a real possibility in the future, but not to talk about that in this video. So Quant Network is very interesting from a number of different perspectives. One of the interesting, so let's just go back and talk about actually what Quant Network is. So Quant Network is not a blockchain. It is an operating system for blockchain and potentially the Internet of Things. And Gilbert Verdrian is probably one of the best placed individuals to talk and to revolutionize this space as somebody with 20 years of cybersecurity experience. He's worked for government bodies within the United Kingdom and a lot of the major banks out there. You know, he's got a really rich banking history, and we've seen Quant Network actually work with the Bank of England on their CBDC pilot, which is coming. So Quant Network is very interesting because it's this idea of an operating system that sits on top of the cryptocurrency space. So you have all the cryptos and all the capabilities of them, and it's very fragmented. And actually what Quant's trying to do is standardize and bring in these bring these technologies together. You know, Gilbert Verdrian is also the founder of the ISO standards, which is becoming a very popular standard. So Quant Network sits on top of the blockchain and is essentially the interface into the crypto space. It's kind of like using the internet as an example, your search engines. You know, the internet, when it initially started, was very fragmented, just like the crypto space is now. You had lots of people working on lots of different things. And essentially it's been all brought together through the likes of search engines and through the likes of standardization, which the cryptocurrency market is still yet to see. And Quant is actually working and pioneering that. We're going to be looking at a few clips of him talking about this and why he believes it's important. You know, lots of people are against this because they believe it ultimately leads to surveillance. And I think there are going to be elements of that because with the Internet of Things, with blockchains, they're inherently transparent. With the Internet of Things, one of the main beneficiaries of the Internet of Things is going to be the data that it generates. If you have all these devices talking to one another, then you can essentially generate a lot of data out of that. And we know how important data is in the sort of Web 2 world. It's even more important in the Web 3 world, and blockchain facilitates the Internet of Things essentially. So Quant is beautifully positioned to enable and play a substantial role in not only the evolution of Web 3, i.e. blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology, but also to actually facilitate and enable the Internet of Things, which it's kind of in keeping with Web3. You know, we're doing even interesting things like tokenizing knowledge at this point, which is a whole new concept that we yet to explore on the channel. So Quant is exceptionally interesting. I do believe it's going to play a massive role in the world that we are moving towards because of this overledger system. I think it's going to play a role in CBDCs and the interoperability that we see there. I think it's going to play a role in interoperability and bringing the crypto space together. Just like a search engine allows you to surf the entire internet, Quant is going to essentially allow you to use the entire crypto space in a sort of standardized fashion and secure fashion. And this is needed. You know, this is needed not only from, if you think about people trying to use the crypto space, it's often, you know, no one is at this stage, I think, that willing to, without something like Quant, you know, put their small to medium enterprise on the blockchain. They don't have the money to facilitate it themselves. That's where something like Quant steps in, you know, because it essentially allows them to gain access to the crypto space and utilize it, which is going to be absolutely a necessity in the world that we're moving towards. People thought that the internet was never going to take off and all those bookstores went out of business because of Jeff Bezos. Same thing with Web3. You're going to need to use it to be competitive in the world that we're moving towards. And Quant's going to enable people to do that in a kind of secure, interoperable way. So it's huge from that point of view. It's also huge from actually securing the Internet of Things, which is very unsecure. Let's actually, before we get into everything, dive into Gilbert Verdrian talking about his experience with the Internet of Things, and then we're going to be looking at a clip of him talking about the standardization of the crypto space.
Yeah, so I've worked in cybersecurity for 20 years as a chief security officer a few times in the last few roles. Security starts with trust, and at the end of the day, you can't trust people you can't control. So your environments in a supply chain, a multi-party environment, are very complex, and it's very difficult for you to embed and have the same controls on your competitors, your partners, third parties, as your own environment. You can only control up to your border. And if you look at what's happened recently, this is a board issue. The Target hack that really happened, I think it's about 5 years ago now, was from the air conditioning partner, which was connected to the Target network, and they used that to get in. So you're already on the back foot with cybersecurity and the risk that you have to manage. The way you address it is through proper risk management and through proper controls, and especially with IoT, because the devices that have come out in IoT do not have the same level of security as computers, because we've spent 20 years, 30 years improving operating systems, networks, and all the firewalls and controls that we have in place for computers, but we haven't done the same for IoT. IoTs are insecure by default, and that's what you have to work with. So the way you manage that is you have a segregated space for IoT devices where only they can communicate with each other. There is no network they can jump into which can affect them, and they're not on the internet, they're not on a public network, they're not on a private network, they're segregated. And for me, as a chief security officer in health, I saw this firsthand where IoT devices that were connected to people to measure blood and different metrics, they could have been hacked, and morphine levels could have been tampered with, so people could have killed themselves. So all the thresholds could have been actually changed remotely, so you can kill people with packets. So the way we fixed that was to completely segregate that environment as an engineering environment, as a IoT environment, and having no one access it except the device, and then back to the server and nothing else. So it's very difficult, but it's possible to do.
And I think that clip kind of echoes a lot of what I'm talking about for the need of, if we are moving to the Internet of Things, that you can't have hacks. You can't have this sort of stuff, because if you think about a city or a house, or his example there was in the health service, if you have this kind of Internet of Things that has all this information and monitoring of patients, if that stuff gets tampered with and hacked, that's a big issue. And this is where I think Quant really kind of steps in from an interoperability point of view, and also from a security and standardization point of view for the Internet of Things that is likely going to have a blockchain element to it. And it also sort of revolutionizes the entire crypto space, or standardizes it in the same way that the internet has been standardized, and standard protocols like TCP, IP, browsers, things like this. That's kind of what Quant's doing for the crypto space. And this is why I actually think it's going to be so big. I really do believe that. I think Gilbert Verdrian is very well positioned. I think Quant's really yet to even take a hold, but I do think that it will. And if we look at some predictions from Norton, which I actually think is a very good software company to use for antivirus, They talk about what the Internet of Things is. They say by 2025, it is estimated that there will be more than 21 billion IoT devices. So today, there are more than 4.5 billion. And cyber criminals will continue to use IoT devices to facilitate DDoS attacks. So a whole company could be held hostage through the Internet of Things if they can get in. You know, Gilbert used a case of people getting in through the air conditioning system and their servers to then get into the sort of hospital systems. More cities will become smart. Yep, you're seeing like smart light bulbs, smart all this sort of smart stuff. You know, this is the direction the world is moving in. Artificial intelligence will continue to become a bigger thing. You also need security and standardization for artificial intelligence. Routers will continue to become more secure and smarter. 5G networks will continue to fuel IoT growth because it will essentially allow them to connect with one another on a bigger scale, not just in the sort of case of a house, you know, these networks. So cars will get even smarter. You're going to smart cars, self-driving cars is already a thing, you know, and there needs to be feedback loops for that. 5G's arrival will also open up doors to new privacy and security concerns. IoT-based DDoS attacks will take on a more dangerous form. So what we've just spoken about, which is where actually Gilbert and Quant step in. Security and privacy concerns will drive legislation and regulatory activity. Now, this was published in 2019, and we've seen a lot of the things that they're speaking about actually come to fruition. So when we're talking about the Internet of Things that's going to have a blockchain element in it, in regards to tracking all this stuff, accounting it all, you know, there really needs to be security measures put in place. And this is some of the stuff that Quant Network is working on: interoperability, standardization. And of course, we know that Gilbert himself was the sort of founder of the ISO standards, which are becoming very popular standards, and actually, I think, could perhaps become the standards for certain cryptocurrencies and certain jurisdictions. You know, there needs to be this kind of bringing together of the industry. I know Chainlink are working on the same thing. I actually think on the Chainlink comment, it's important for me to bring this up, that both of these technologies, both Quant and Chainlink, Quant might even use Chainlink. You know, Chainlink talks about this kind of Internet of Contracts, which is a world that we're moving towards, and Quant's talking about the kind of Internet of everything. You know, and how do we facilitate that? How do we bring it all under one roof? And they plan on their operating system being the kind of connective tissue between the real world and the blockchain world, which is very, very interesting. And I think, you know, for me personally, I own the Quant token. The Quant token is essentially used to use the Quant network and to secure it to a degree, to lock things up. And I think that, you know, it's going to do well as a result of that. Certainly if this does kick off and Gilbert is making headway in the space. Let's now play a quick clip of him actually talking about the ISO standards and how he founded it and why he founded it.
So my name is Gilbert Verdi, and I am a cybersecurity background. Reason why I'm here today is I established the ISO blockchain standard TC307 in 2016. There's 57 countries working on that today. So that is an international standard, which as ISO is the right venue for. What ISO is doing is at the top level in terms of governance, in terms of descriptive standards, and there's already quite a few out. I actually chair interoperability within ISO in Working Group 7, and what we're doing is creating an interoperability framework, and that basically is what are the building blocks that different vendors and participants need to create in order to create standards that the industry can adopt. It's not prescriptive. It's not saying the packet should be 64K, it should have a checksum of this, and it should have an ACK handshake of that. It's not prescriptive in that sense. And that's where institutions and bodies like IETF come in. And what we kind of expect is technical engineering to be done within engineering organizations like IEEE and IETF, and that feeds in to the standard that's coming out of ISO already. So I'm very supportive of this, and I'd really like to kind of bring some experience working in banking and in government on the cybersecurity side. One of the comments made is this a type of surveillance? I would argue no, it's not a type of surveillance. It's a protocol enabling interoperability between different types of networks. Who uses that network has to sign up to some scheme rules, and this is consistent with what happens in card networks, payment networks, Swift type banking networks. So if there's an issue, it's up to the participant to respond to that suspicious activity, resolve a dispute between them, and they're all in writing, in contracts within the different participants within the scheme. So the way it works is you're not relying on the technical protocol to solve your problem, you're relying on human interaction and contractual rules to solve the problem. So this protocol is not here to solve that issue, it's here to solve the technical interconnectivity between these different networks. And one final thing to say is digital assets, what we've got in ISO as a defined vocabulary standard. So this is in ISO CD 22739 terminology, and digital assets have been defined as an asset that exists only in digital form or that has been converted from some other form to a digital representation. Now, these digital assets are here today and they're not going away. What we've seen from working with central banks and other banks at the company I work in at Quant is there's a $16 trillion opportunity with digital assets by 2030. So people are digitizing what they've, some form of asset that used to be in a different form into a digital form, and that's not going away. But the problem, which I saw from 2015, 2016, was people are making these in isolation and people are making these in silos. So how can these assets interoperate and how can they interconnect between the different networks? And IETF is the right venue to create the protocol to do it.
So really, to sort of summarize everything, what Quant is doing is trying to facilitate, you know, the Web3 space essentially as a whole through their overledger system that will allow it to be secure through certain standardization that will allow it to work and interconnect, and that will essentially allow it to grow as a result and allow the kind of real world to be able to use it. So it is extremely interesting. I think there's definitely, it might not be Quant. It just happens to be that Quant are working on it, and they're probably one of the most far ahead on this kind of bringing everything under one roof. However, you know, there is definitely the need for standardization in the crypto space, and not just standardization, but how to bring it all together, just like Web3, just like Web 2, and enable it to work and facilitate things like the Internet of Things, which is security is at the utmost important. And again, Gilbert's background is in this. We know that Quant's worked with the Bank of England on their Project Rosalind, and they were, you know, very much held to high esteem by the Bank of International Settlement. So that is really all I've got for you in this video, guys. I didn't want to go too much technically into it from a price point of view, just to kind of re-mention Quant to everyone and just say, look, keep this cryptocurrency on your radar. Because what they're doing is pretty awesome and actually needed. And that's the thing. When you see a product fit, like Quant's Overledger system, you know, it's worth paying attention to. So that's all I've got for you in this video, guys. If you enjoyed the content, likes, appreciate it as a comment. And on that note, I'm going to catch you all in the next one, hopefully. See you in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching.